Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Star Wars Nitpicks. This is the first of a hopefully ongoing series of pieces, each of which that will address a different nitpick that we have within the Star Wars universe. To kick things off today, I'm going to be talking about a nitpick that I've had for a very long time. It's honestly always in the back of my mind, and it usually creeps to the forefront of my thoughts in the small hours of the morning, as I lie in bed, unable to sleep. A lot of you will either find this completely ridiculous, having never entered your minds. The rest of you, I'm sure, will share in my torment. I'm talking, of course, about lightsabers. At face value, relatively simple, right? Glowing plasma swords that reach high temperatures that can easily slice through virtually anything, barring other lightsabers and maybe Beskar, or Azilobis. Or if you wanted to get into legends, Cortosis. They can extend and retract out of their metal, or wooden if you're a Wookiee, hilt. They vary in sizes and color. They come single-bladed, double-bladed, cross-guarded, folded, curved, conjoined to a blaster, as a whip, as a staff, whatever weird helicopter thing the Inquisitors use, etc., etc. And that's all fine and good. The diversity of lightsabers doesn't bother me, because in essence, they're supposed to follow similar rules. They come out as something, and they're glowing weapons. But there's one thing that they never follow across all media, whether it be movies, live-action television, or animation. And that's the tip. Yeah, that's right. The tip of the lightsaber makes no sense to me. What the hell is he talking about, you may ask? Obviously, different forms of media will exhibit lightsabers differently. Live-action representations are going to be different from animated representations because of artistic license and taste, etc. Yeah, that makes sense to me. But that's not what's going on. What incenses me isn't that lightsaber tips vary across media, but that they vary within those media. My problem is that there is no such thing as an official lightsaber tip shape. There isn't a general lightsaber tip shape that I can hold in my mind as a constant, and it makes me so illogically mad. Is it sharp or is it round? Is it thick or is it narrow? This may not bother you now, but after this video, it definitely will. Or not. I can't speak for you. All I can do is present my evidence and let you take it from there. For those of you that haven't already left this rant, let's start at the only place we should. The beginning. Star Wars. May 1977, the first time audiences ever lay eyes on a lightsaber. Ben Kenobi presents Luke with his father's lightsaber, and he ignites it. A glowing blue blade emerges, and it all converges at the tip. But since this is the first movie, and in a time where effects were mostly done by hand, I think I can give this entire film a pass. Let's move on to The Empire Strikes Back. As I juxtapose all the scenes with lightsabers, there are obvious inconsistencies. From the Wampa scene, to Han cutting open a Tauntaun, to Luke cutting into an AT-AT, to Dagobah, to Cloud City. And, okay, you could also say that since lightsabers are literally light, they fluctuate in shape when lit. So yeah, I'd give the first two movies of this trilogy that benefit of the doubt, because they're pretty similar when it comes to all that. Honestly, the idea that the tip is ever changing is one I can get behind, but that's really only something you can say about 4 and 5.
Remember the Force. Rejoice in the triumph. Return of the Jedi.
If we move on to Return of the Jedi, there's a definite attempt to make the lightsabers more uniform. Movie-making technology and methods had greatly improved by 1983. We can see that the narrow convergence with a small round-off seems like the path that they want to go. And to that, you could easily ask me, then what's your problem? They know all of this and are trying to fix it. And yeah, if we stopped at the original trilogy and nothing else ever came out, I think I could put this to rest in my mind. But Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. The infamous return of Star Wars to the big screen after 16 years of nothing. It seems that with even more technological improvements, there came an even more uniform approach to lightsabers, and their tips. Juxtaposing the different scenes in which lightsabers appear in this film, it looks like Lucas wanted to continue the standard he tried establishing in Return of the Jedi. Narrow convergences with a small, rounded-off tip. Great. Thank the maker, I can finally sleep. Until Episode 2 came out.
Begun this Clone War has.
Lucas seems to have established a new normal when it comes to tips. Now, instead of a steady convergence, lightsabers now seem to share a similar constant and parallel extension, with a quick and slightly sharp convergence near the tip. I would liken this shape to that of a broadsword, wielded by a knight. In Revenge of the Sith, this style continued, but with the tips being even sharper and the convergence beginning slightly lower. Fine, okay, I can work with that. So now we have a new and established official lightsaber tip shape that we can all think of when picturing a lightsaber, right? "10 years later, Episode 7, The Force Awakens, is released. And guess what? They changed the f***ing tips again. Now they fluctuate way more, like they did in the original trilogy, but they also seem to have kept the similar broadsword shape from the prequels. I'm not going to cover Kylo Ren's tip shape because his lightsaber is just a whole different ballgame to begin with. Traitor! Let's take a detour to Rogue One. The only lightsaber appearance is near the very end for a very short scene. I'm talking, of course, about when Darth Vader slaughters a hallway of rebels chasing after the Death Star plans. Vader's lightsaber tip in this scene is very appealing to me. It's almost a hybrid of the original trilogy tip and the prequel tip. 10 out of 10 tip. I'd be happy with this as the standard tip, but we all know that's never going to happen. Cut to Episode 8, The Last Jedi. That's all out the window now. Luckily, we get an especially up-close look at the Skywalker lightsaber tip when Rey trains with that big rock. Now the lightsaber isn't even pointy. It's incredibly stable, and its round-off is huge. So it's similar to the prequel version, but also not. In The Rise of Skywalker, now it's just like a tube with almost no convergence, and the tip looks like one of those toy lightsabers, or maybe not. I don't f***ing know anymore. This is supposed to be the same lightsaber we've had this whole trilogy, the trilogy before it, and the trilogy before that. Now that the main movies are covered, let's take a look at other live-action Star Wars. And before we go on, yes, I know I didn't cover Solo. Yeah, Darth Maul ignites his lightsaber, but all of his tips are off-screen. Let's take a look at the other live-action Star Wars, The Mandalorian. In Season 1, we got a Darksaber, which, thank the maker, has retained a consistent tip shape between all media. But we finally got our first peek at regular lightsabers in Season 2, Chapter 13, The Jedi. Ahsoka Tano and her white lightsabers are all over this episode, but take a look at the tips. That's a brand new tip shape. The convergence starts lower than usual, the light is stable, and the round-off is very dull. Moving on. So we've delved deep into live-action media in search of proof. Let's turn now to the animations. On one hand, we have the Clone Wars, and on the other, we have Rebels. The lightsabers in Rebels were strangely thin, but their tips seem pretty uniform throughout all 4 seasons. They're sort of similar to the tips in the original trilogy, but more narrow. The Clone Wars is a whole different story. For the original movie, as well as the first few seasons of the show, the tip seems to be rounded off for the most part. As we near the last few seasons, however, those same lightsabers now appear to be dramatically sharper. A change in design choice, I understand that, but it's just further proof that an official general tip shape does not exist. And just for extra credit, let's take a look at the video games. There's a lot of them, so I'm only going to focus on a few key ones, such as all Battlefronts, New and Old, Jedi Fallen Order, Force Unleashed, Knights of the Old Republic, and Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy. That seemed like a nice spread to me. We'll start with Jedi Knight. Jedi Knight seems to have a similar tip design to the original trilogy, with thinner lightsabers and a steady convergence to a narrow round-off. Knights of the Old Republic also has that same tip design. Battlefront 1 from 2004 has tips similar to the previous games as well, with steady convergences and small round-offs. The Force Unleashed exhibits a tip shape that's thicker with a larger round-off. The lightsaber tips in Battlefront 2 from 2005 have very steady convergences, and we have completely parallel extensions. Take a look at Jedi convergences, they're similar to the new Battlefront tips, semi-circle, way sharper. Battlefront. Okay, now that we've gotten through the 3 trilogies, as well as The Mandalorian and the animated shows, and even the flippin' games, at this point, we can compare and contrast with all these examples all we want, but the flimsy argument that different lightsabers can look different can still remain. Because of this, a control is needed. A lightsaber that's present in all of the various media, whether it's live action, animation, or video game. And that is Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber. This is the best and most pure example I have of this issue. And all I can ask is why? Why is this the case? How can one lightsaber exhibit so many different tips, Did they think we wouldn't notice? Or did they think we wouldn't care? Which, fair enough. Either way, this question plagues me, and I doubt I'll ever get an answer. All I can hope for is that going forward, Lucasfilm will have the decency to just pick a tip and stick with it, for the sake of our collective sanity. For those of you still unconvinced that this issue warrants an entire essay, I have this to say. You're definitely right, this is really stupid, but I didn't choose this problem, it chose me. If you're only looking at lightsabers from individual movie to movie, episode to episode, cartoon to cartoon, it's easy to not pay attention. But if you're like me, who spends his time thinking about Star Wars in its entirety, the differences are incredibly unnerving and it's hard to marry them. And it shouldn't be. This shouldn't bother me, but it does, and I can't help that. My only consolation is that I've hopefully opened your eyes and condemned you to noticing these glaring discrepancies too, so that I don't have to suffer alone. All in all, the reality I've come to face is that there is no such thing as a true lightsaber tip shape. It's whatever you think it is, which is hard because there are so many conflicting choices. But at the end of the day, we can all rest easy in those small hours of the night, knowing that the people who make Star Wars obviously don't know either. This has been a Star Wars Nitpick. Thanks for letting me waste your time.